My name is Emily Beitiks, B-E-I-T-I-K-S. I'm here in my dark background in my bedroom, and just a little audio description for any viewers joining by phone or blind low vision. I'm a Caucasian woman, close up on my headshot, wearing a purple shirt and hoop earrings, and a little flushed because my bedroom's very hot. I am the Associate Director at the Longmore Institute on Disability, and I'm the producer of Superfest Disability Film Festival. We're very excited to be bringing this program today, and it's thanks to two colleagues in particular at the Asian Art Museum who've been huge advocates for bringing more access to their museum. And that's Indra, I-N-D-R-A Mungal, M-U-N-G-A-L, and Allison, A-L-L-I-S-O-N, Wyckoff, W-Y-K-O-F-F. We're very grateful for a number of programs that the Longmore Institute has been able to do with the Asian Art Museum, and this being one that we've been planning for some time. So when coronavirus happened and we were all looking for ways to do online programming, this seemed like a perfect opportunity to put a program out there that we thought would be a really meaningful conversation. We're going to jump in our films soon. Just a quick few notes and thank yous. One is that funding for this program has also been provided thanks to the Haas Chair in Disability Studies at UC Berkeley. And that's also thanks to our moderator, Karen Nakamura. And also, just a few notes about some of the films. Well, our films will play with open audio description and captioning today, so open captioning. We know that audio description isn't sort of perfect for everybody, so feel free to reach out if you'd like to see some screenings in the future that don't have open audio description. We know access for some can take away from others. But just a note as well, some of the films may begin and you'll hear the audio description, and it may seem like, oh no, something's going wrong, the captioning isn't going. We don't typically, the filmmakers don't typically caption the audio description because it can be just a little bit too text heavy if they do. So there will be a few films that are mostly silent film, so the audio description that you'll be hearing will not be captioned. In some cases it is, but you're just gonna have to trust the journey. With that, I will pass it to my colleague, Maxfield Hunt, who's the Superfest Showcase Coordinator. Thank you, Maxfield.
Thank you, indeed. In terms of a sort of give people a visual, I'm here behind a backdrop. I'm lucky enough to have the Superfest logo right behind me in a physical stance. I've got glasses and I've got ridiculous long blonde hair. You know, just gotta have that going. And so, as Emily suggested, I'm a student associate at Longmore at San Francisco State. And in terms of a little bit about what Superfest is all about, so we aim to sort of revolutionize the ways that disability is thought about and a lot of the tropes that are out there. When we think about that, what better way to do that with film, right? Because there's lots of different representations within film. Of course, it becomes problematic when there are people writing about people rather than the people themselves writing the content itself. And so Superfest is proud of the fact that everything, every aspect from curating, creating, producing, writing, directing, all folks with disability. And this is an important distinction because that it makes the representation that much better. As Emily also suggested, we've got audio description. This is unique for Superfest. One of the things that we really are proud of. Please bear in mind that we're treading this new territory, so for whatever technical glitches may happen, we are sure to correct them as fast as we can. And that having been said, I think we'll move on. And through some screen sharing action here, we'll begin having some comments. First, go ahead. It's all yours.
Okay, so hi everyone. My name is Indra Mangal and I work in the education department at the Asian Art Museum. We are so pleased and honored to be able to partner with the Longmore Institute for this film festival. We had planned to have this on at our museum, but now have to do it online. So just to describe me, I'm sitting in a room with an orange painting behind me. I have shoulder length dark hair. I'm half Indian, so I look Indian. I have glasses on, and I'm smiling because I'm so happy to be here. Quite frankly, this is a thrill. I briefly just wanted to tell you that the Asian Art Museum definitely has sincerely made a priority to be accessible and welcoming to all. And we're working very hard at it. We work regularly with community partners. We want to continue to make the museum more and more accessible. We offer amenities such as audio tours and special programs such as the one we are viewing tonight and on site when we get back to the museum. We invite you to visit us when we reopen. Admission for visitors with special needs is completely free, plus one companion. And you can find out more on our website at asianart.org. After the program tonight, we will be sending out a survey to attendees because we'd like to hear from you. It helps us plan for future programs and gives us good input to know what you'd like to see and how we did for tonight. So without further ado, we're going to launch into the films. Thank you to the Longmore folks and our interpreters. We greatly appreciate you. Enjoy.
On a black background, rippling hand-drawn lavender words. Nature of Pleasure by Thon Deep. A pink and blue image of a woman and man kiss repeatedly.
No one in my family ever discusses sex around me. They try and protect me, or they think it's not an important topic to talk about. Although I have learned about sexuality in schools, and can talk about it with some of my close friends, it's a barrier between my family and me.
A drawing.
I'm the only female in a family of 5 men, so that makes it more difficult for the discussion of sex to come up.
5 boys around a girl.
I'm also the youngest, and I will always be like a little girl in their eyes, which makes them a little overprotective of me.
The figures ripple over the kissing couple. Rippling lavender words. Attachment. Courage. Devotion. Families, a neon green woman and man face to face.
One summer I went camping with my friends for a week. I met a really sweet guy who was a non-disabled person, and he was around my age. Every day we went swimming, ate lunch together, took walks around the camp, and just hung out and talked. On the last night of camping, he asked me to be his dance partner at the dance party. I was really falling for him. But unfortunately, when I told him how much I enjoyed myself, and that I'd like to get involved with him, he started backing up emotionally. I realized by then, it was just a friendly kind of thing.
Rippling green words. Disappointed. Heartbroken. Hurt. Judgment. A jerking red woman and man kiss.
My ideal relationship would be that my partner and I will have an equal, physical, emotional and intellectual attraction. He would also be willing to have a kid. I have cerebral palsy, and I need assistance with the bathroom, eating, showering, getting dressed, and getting in and out of my wheelchair and bed. I fear that my partner, being my caregiver also, will reach a point where it will all be too much for him.
Rippling red words. Affection. Desire. Emotion. Love. A pale blue man lifts a woman's veil.
I sometimes browse the personal ads. When I think about disclosing my disability, I become afraid that when a person finds out that I am disabled, they will freak out and be scared to ask me out on a date. I sometimes feel disappointed about this and left out, especially when I see my friends, disabled and non-disabled, getting involved in relationships and sometimes getting married. It makes me wonder if I'll ever meet a guy who will love me for all of who I am.
The man kisses the woman. Rippling pale green words. Function. Intelligence. Life. Passions. A hot pink man and woman kiss.
Physically, I like feeling the warmth of being in someone's arms. Emotionally, it feels good when there is someone who brings the sunshine in my life when I am feeling down.
Rippling orange words. Happy. Heart. Warm. A montage of colored female faces.
As for my body image, I don't make comparisons between my body and ones that are called picture perfect, because I really like the way I look, although I do wish I was a little fatter at times.
A drawn purple face. A lavender hand reaches for a woman.
When I have sexual feelings or just want to be alone with myself, I'll touch certain parts of my body for pleasure. This seems very simple for most non-disabled people to do, but it's difficult for me. I can move my hands over areas of my body, but I really can't rub them. With cerebral palsy, most of the time it seems like my muscles have a mind of their own. They oftentimes move when I really don't want them to. But the positive side of this is when I see a guy that I like, I can slap him on the butt, or touch him on the back, and I'll just say, sorry, but my hands sometimes have a mind of their own.
Rippling pink words. Body. Pleasure. Soul. A yellow man and woman kiss.
Some stereotypes of what society calls beautiful is a woman who looks like she appears in a fashion magazine, one who gets married, has some kids, and who wants to be taken care of in many ways.
Green figures.
In other words,
One pushes.
one who risks giving up her independence.
A wheelchair.
Even though I need assistance physically, the difference with me is that I want to be an independent person.
The wheelchair person alone. Rippling yellow words. Worth. Sad. A pink woman embraces a man.
When I am happy, having someone there to be happy with me makes me twice as happy. Although, my basic pleasures do not depend on anyone but myself.
The smiling green figure. A black and white photo appears under it. A smiling dark-haired girl with round cheeks and a broad nose. The images shift with a purple tint over it. Description provided by Woman of Her Word. Voiced by Michelle Spitz. Described by Audio Eyes.
Crossroad Arts presents white braille cells, fast-moving. 2 rows of white dots chasing each other across a black screen. Text appears. On Wednesday, December the 7th, 2016, Brendan Borrellini met Hiroe Takahashi for a brief moment at a workshop for blind and deaf-blind photographers in Sendai, Japan. When Brendan returned to his home in Mackay, Australia, he decided to make a film. Sendai, December the 7th, 2016. A black and white photograph of Hiroe and Brendan turns to a black and white film. Brendan's head rests on Hiroe's arm. His hands gently touch her arm as Hiroe's fingers dance across the thumb keys of his braille note, trying to write her name. As Brendan joins the dance, Hiroe gently pushes him away. Brendan laughs. Nihongo, English, English, Nihongo. Tapping thumb keys, tapping. Tap, tap, tap. Hiroe laughs. The film dissolves to a window overlooking a city street. It's 1 month later in Mackay, Australia, 36 degrees Celsius, as palm trees sweat. A container truck comes to a halt. Brendan leans against the window, wind against his face. Outside, a small bird perched on a telegraph wire scopes the horizon. Brendan's hands reach towards the window pane. His thoughts are caught in the light. I cannot see or hear you. He turns and faces the camera. His fingers tell us, I feel wind on my face. I smell the heat. As the container truck moves off, Brendan turns back and faces the street. The sky fills with birds, migrating north. Sitting with his 2 colleagues, Steve and Autumn, Brendan reaches down and places a camera on the table. An array of electrical cords follow, along with 3 flooded lights. Brendan fingerspells to Autumn. I want to make a film, he says. About what? She replies. Hiroe and me, Brendan says. How? Asks Steve. You and I film, says Brendan, pointing to Steve, and Autumn, you play my sister. Okay, says Steve. When? Now. Brendan stands. Brendan reaches down and picks up a large folded tripod and begins to open it out. Steve and Autumn begin to help set up the studio for filming. Wires spaghetti light picked up and shifted across the floor. Ladder pulled along the wooden floorboard. A lighting dimmer is placed on a small platform. Costumes hung, chairs removed, lighting rigs raised, lights tested. Brendan methodically goes through the costumes hanging on the ladder, handling each piece with care as he finally chooses a top for Autumn, who will play his sister. She leaves the room as Brendan moves towards the lighting dimmer and camera set up on a tripod near the table. He moves the slider up and a bright light illuminates the room. He reaches across and turns the camera on. He now moves to a chair by the table. Head in hands, the film is ready to begin. The screen darkens as the title of the film fades into view, When Brendan Met Hiroe. Head cupped between hands, face downward looking, Brendan sits alone in a room, thoughts of another time in another land. A ceiling fan, whirring, tired, moving slowly. Brendan sits with an open page book of haiku poetry. A camera rests on the table in front of him. Suddenly, he reaches down, picks up the book, throwing it violently against the wall. He stands and moves, pacing the floor. Shoulders hunched, restless, lost in thought, face locked in torment, pacing. He then comes to a halt, willing on a moment in time, Sendai, December the 7th. He resumes his seat, clenched fists pressing hard against the wooden table. Hiroi's laughing face, apparition of that time, appears briefly and is now gone. Again, Brendan stands, pacing the floor. Fan moving overhead, whirring, tired, slowly. As the camera frames a close-up of Brendan's face, a door opens and his sister appears. Autumn sees Brendan's book of haiku poetry and looks up at Brendan. He remains motionless. She moves slowly towards the book and opens to a page of Brendan's poetry. Brother, sister, a year apart, born of the same mother. Her fingers run across the braille, hand reaching out. Water laps nearby, 1,000 grains of sand. Why don't you write to her? Autumn hand signs to Brendan. She won't understand me, Brendan replies. Try. No. Hiroi's dreamlike image appears on the wall. She reaches out and takes his hand in hers. I thought you said you liked her. Brendan replies, I do, as a friend. So, write to her. She won't remember me. Send her your photograph. She's blind. Brendan again folds his arm in defense, shutting his sister out. Autumn turns, unsure of what to do, and then sees the camera. She quickly moves to the table, picks up the camera. She takes Brendan's hand. Smile! Brendan, head down, remains defiant. She pushes his mouth upwards. Brendan's head drops further. His sister begins to tickle him. From one side to the other, Brendan fights, tickling, resisting, until finally her brother gives in and his face bursts into laughter. She gets the shot. Brother, sister, born of the same mother, and almost like magic, this chosen captured moment fixed in time, its image raised above the paper's emulsified surface, moves towards Brendan's hands as they brush across this embossed braille-like map of the human face. Lifted upwards from the printer in a shared brother-sister moment, sister-brother born of the same mother. The sister reaches for the envelope which will carry this photo across the seas in the hope that a shared moment in time will be remembered by his friend Hiroi Takahashi. The brother and sister walk arm in arm towards the post box. Lid opened. The envelope is posted. Moving shadows resembling people hurrying appear behind a bubble glass window, flickering, while one shadow remains still. The camera slowly tilts down, revealing a woman wearing a thick padded parka sitting in a cafe. Her hands rest on the border of a large envelope. The name on the envelope, Hiroi Takahashi. It's Sendai, Japan, 25th of January 2017. Hiroi runs her hands around the edge of the envelope as outside the cafe window, commuters carrying suitcases navigate their way past a braille trail. Hiroi now opens the envelope. She takes from it a piece of paper. Her hands sweep across the surface of the paper, searching for a message in braille. Instead, she feels contours, map-like, undulated valleys, folds, mounds, small hills, crevices dipping down here and raised up over there. The scene now cuts to Australia, where Brendan is packing his suitcase. He now laces up his shoes. Outside, the bird on a wire decides to take flight. In the cafe in Sendai, Hiroi continues her exploration of this most unusual map. And then, slowly, a form begins to emerge. Where the valley once was, lips reveal themselves into a smile, and above them the mountain now becomes a nose. Eyes stare back at her as her fingers glide across their lids. I know this face. I know this smile. The memory now appears as a moving image behind her. From the window of a fast-moving train, clouds hug the snow-capped peak of Mount Fuji. Dear Hiroe, it's Brendan Borrellini from Australia. Did you receive my photograph? I haven't heard back from you. By the way, I bought a ticket to Japan. In fact, I'm on the Shinkansen right now, heading to Sendai. I'm bringing a film crew. I hope you don't mind. Hiroe's face comes into view as she reads the message on her phone. She pauses, reflects, taking in the moment with a short, "Oh. Dear Brendan, this is a very big surprise. When do you arrive?" The head of a crow, its eyes staring directly at the camera lens, scopes the horizon. "We arrive at 2 p.m. today," Brendan writes. "I cannot meet you," replies Hiroe. Out the window of the train, the countryside transforms into a white blanket of snow. Brendan looks up from his phone. White sheets of powder snow load the slate roofs of houses. "You will need to catch another train to Onagawa. I'll wait on platform 17. It is my last day before I begin my studies." Outside the window, migratory birds of all shapes and sizes race with the train as it gets closer to Sendai. Sendai train station. Swarms of masked, unmasked winter coats, umbrellas arm in arm, trains to board, taxis to catch, babies in prams, couples crisscrossing past the lone man with the Patagonian ear-flap hat, who's oblivious to the cacophony of arrival and departure announcements. The escalator guides him down into the belly of the station and into a tunnel marked conveniently with a braille trail snaking its way through to the platform that will take him to Onagawa. Cane in hand, he navigates his way towards the ticket gate as a masked mechanic goes about his day cleaning its cogs and sprockets. Brendan inserts and collects his ticket, moving closer to the platform as the train comes to a slow halt, and Brendan, with aviator glasses, is now seated, while Hiroe follows her own braille trail, confidently towards platform 17. A distracted woman crosses her path, at the last moment quickly steps out of her way. Hiroe continues on. The escalator carries her towards the familiar ticket gate of platform 17. She greets the uniformed inspector in his familiar glass booth. He waves her through. Hiroe politely nods. On the train, the blind man wearing the Patagonian ear-flap hat, carrying a small gift, is noticed by a girl leaning on the train door. Hiroe is now seated at platform 17. As the doors of the train open onto platform 17, people move aside as Brendan slowly steps off. Hiroe, with her small backpack and cane in hand, waits on a seat as the train moves off. The white cane feels its way along the braille trail. Hiroe waits. The cane continues to scan along the brickwork. Hiroe, hearing the tapping of the cane, turns. Brendan catches Hiroe's ethereal fragrance. Their canes touch, playfully. Brendan, with a beaming smile, sits down beside her. Their arms enfold, faces touch. Brendan gently presses a kiss onto Hiroe's cheek. He places a gift into her hands. She accepts it. Again he throws his arms around Hiroe. She laughs as he ushers her to accept the gift, wrapped in a plastic bag. There's a slight awkward moment as they fumble with the bag. Brendan cups the bottom of the bag and raises it up for Hiroe. She takes out a smaller paper package, and the fragrance lights up her face. With her finger, she writes on Brendan's hand. One day. We only have one day. Their arms again enfold each other. Brendan ushers her to open the gift. She tears the top of the small parcel, revealing a bean curd bun. Hiroe breaks the bun and offers half to Brendan. Together, they take their first bite, savouring the sweet and the moment. Arm in arm, Hiroe leads Brendan off the platform, up the escalator, and along the Braille Trail to a small cafe where they plan their day. Hiroe teaches Brendan her name in Japanese hand signing. Hiroe. Brendan repeats as he signs her name. Hiroe. He continues to repeat the signing.
Cut to a Japanese restaurant, miso tempura fish, rice bowl edamame, yakitori, pass the hot tea, fast-moving chopsticks from the bowl to the mouth. They lick their lips and wolf it down. Welcome to Japan.
Cut to a station, waiting for a bus. Off we go, he's asleep, she's awake. Cars whoosh past. Truck overtaking. Off the bus they walk down a path, speckled with snow on either side. Through a tunnel, arm in arm, they reach their destination. Brendan again presses on the shutter. They take turns. Faces close to the lens. Two lives held still for that precious moment, never to be repeated. Gone forever. The sideway glance, part-mouth, cropped head disappearing off the page. These daring portraits of two friends facing the sky. The flapping of wings breaks the silence as a flock of birds brush past their faces. Birds of all kinds, shapes and sizes. Curlews, sparrows, rayuku, robins, black-faced spoonbills and snipes, readying for their journey south. Migrants with a free passage and hope. The new contraband passed from hand to hand, from story to story. Two friends facing the sky. I see your smile. I see the wind in your hair. I see your eyes. I see your spirit. With gentle snow falling around them, Brendan and Hiroe walk back to the platform along the Braille Trail, where this man with the Patagonian ear-flap hat who has travelled so far will leave this northern winter and return to Australia. Hiroe's colourful face fills the screen. The platform behind her, a young couple pushing a child in a pram walk past, and the train waiting to leave, as this girl from Onagawa remembers this one day in January when she received an unexpected text message from somebody she had only briefly met a month before. While Brendan contemplates the migratory patterns of the long-beaked snipe, at the length of a school ruler and weighing only 200 grams, he wonders how such a tiny bird is able to fly 8,000 kilometers from Australia to Japan in just 2 days. Back in Australia, Brendan stands at the window facing the street, looking up to the sky. A small bird rests on the wire. I feel wind on my face. I smell the heat. Taking his paintbrush, he moves to the wall, and with 2 strokes, he begins to paint birds. Birds of all shapes and sizes.
Words appear. Rhizophora. Rhizophora is a tree that grows in forests along the coast of Vietnam. Its roots are called rhizomes. If a rhizome is separated into pieces, each piece can create a whole new plant. Rhizomes spread in all directions simultaneously. There is no beginning or end. Every point is the center. Bright green leaves and buds quiver in a light breeze. Through the leaves, out of focus and in the distance, we catch a glimpse of an arm extending. We move deeper into the forest, focusing on the luscious green plants and leaves. A rising hand slowly opens, twists, and reaches skyward. Fade to black. Words appear. Took day. Waking up. Our view looks down from the ceiling at a mattress lying on a tile floor. On it lie a long, slim, dark-haired girl and a very small, dark-haired woman facing each other, their arms and legs entwined. The young women separate and roll away from each other. The smaller but older young woman shimmies to the bottom of the mattress and puts her feet up on her pillow. From above, it appears as if she is standing on her head. She pokes her foot in the girl's face, who grabs her leg and holds it. They shift positions again. The girl on the right wears an orange top and black leggings. The woman on the left wears bright pink pajamas. The woman in pink rolls onto her stomach and makes swimming motions against the bed. They curl their bodies. The girl in orange now at the bottom of the mattress and standing on her head with her feet up on her pillow. They continue to wriggle around. They throw their limbs wide, forming X's with their torsos and extended legs and arms. They stretch their arms languidly. Still in the lying position, the woman in pink has a toothbrush and brushes her teeth. She gives a cup to the other girl, who pretends to drink from it. The woman in pink grabs a jacket on the floor and tosses it onto the other girl. She puts it on and then tosses a hoodie to the small woman in pink. She stuffs her arms into the sleeves. The girl in orange puts on a glittery headband and retrieves a short purple skirt. She pulls it on over her leggings. The woman in pink retrieves a purse from the floor and adjusts it over her shoulder. They nod at each other and smile. On their sides, they make running motions. The girl in orange looks up, smiles broadly, and waves at us. Fade to black. Green leaves and deep shadows. A small hand reaches through brown sinewy vines. Two longer hands caress the rough bark of a tree. Words appear. Entourage. Lunch. Under a portico framed by large wooden pillars, 11 young people sit at round tables with small white bowls in front of them. They sweep chopsticks above their heads, lower them to their mouths, and abruptly pull the chopsticks away from their pursed lips and dive them into their empty bowls. A young man in a red cap and a wheelchair caresses his bowl and smiles as he waves it back and forth under his chin. A young woman swims her bowl on her flat palm swiftly through the air in rising and falling waves. She twists at the waist left and right, keeping the bowl in front of her. A girl with a ponytail picks up her bowl, gazing into it. A very small man, not much taller than the table, stands balancing his bowl on his head and makes small circling motions with his body. The young man in the red cap and wheelchair reaches skyward with his chopsticks. A boy in a white sweater dances frantically. A girl drums on the tabletop with her chopsticks. The small man with the bowl balanced on his head smiles as he dips his body up and down and left and right. The girl with a ponytail gazing into her bowl now rises from her seat and sways left and right with the bowl cupped in both hands. She sways back down into her seat and sets the bowl gently on the table. Fade to black. Two hands reach through copious leaves, fingers wiggling, reaching upward. More hands join and wind around the others, mingling, stretching, and twisting. Alone, through the greeny leafy branches emerge the two hands of a girl in a bright green shirt. Her elbows bent and palms resting against the top of her head, her fingers contort at odd angles away from each other and extend above her head. She slowly stands. Her entire body rises and rises, following her hands and fingers higher. Words appear. Toy Giantra. Tea time. In a grassy playground area, two women, not more than 3 feet tall, play a game with large numbered cards. The two women quickly fling the cards to the ground and at one another. They tease and taunt each other playfully, chatter, and move around in circles. One woman with a ponytail has a hunched back and wears a bright yellow top, yellow hat with mouse ears and black and white polka dot bow. The other woman wears a bright orange sweater and plaid cap of bright orange, white, blue, and black. She wears thick glasses. Behind the women, a very small man bows under a large fern and sneaks past them and behind a cartoon mouse statue. He carries a small teapot and cup and approaches a young man resting in a wheelchair with eyes closed. The small man passes the empty teacup back and forth in front of the resting man's face, whose eyes remain closed as he sways in his chair, following the cup with his nose. The small man moves to his other side and again tempts him with the teacup and pantomimes drinking from it. The other man's head rises and snakes after it, a delighted smile crossing his face. The small man passes behind and again offers the cup. The sitting man leans toward it, but the small man moves out of reach. The two women in their game toss their cards on the ground and through the air. The small man stands on a platform and waves the teacup up and down in the direction of the others. A young woman in a red dress with unusually large eyes takes the cup from him, mimes drinking from it, and gives it back. She jumps wildly up and down. She is holding a long wooden walking stick and performs a twirling dance with the stick as her partner. Around her waist, she wears an upside-down, tattered straw basket that hangs off her shoulders on makeshift string suspenders. The small man continues to dance with a teapot and cup. The man in the wheelchair takes the teacup and mimes drinking from it. He sways in his chair. The woman in yellow with mouse ears flings her cards at the small man holding the teapot. The woman wearing the straw basket runs around the grounds, hopping up and down and making rowing motions with the walking stick. She wildly waves her arms as she turns and spins. The grass under their feet is in sparse patches and strewn with dead leaves. Cut to black. In the midst of abundant trees and foliage, a small young woman in a bright green sweater slowly dances. Eyes closed, she sways back and forth as she arches her arms and curved hands undulating in front of her. Nearby, a small boy's arms are held crooked as he stiffly moves. Another boy opens and closes his hands. We move back and forth between individual close-up images of each of the 11 young men and women with their eyes closed, as if in a dream. Dressed in earthen colors of brown and green, some of the children wear leaves in their hair. Each stands alone, moving their hands and arms in smooth rising motions. Fingers wiggle and tap the air, as if playing an invisible instrument. A girl wears purple flowers in her hair and strokes her face with the back of her hand. Blurry green images of the trees and leaves. Bare feet scraping the leaves and mud. The children move continuously, bodies and arms swaying, hands flowing, stooping low and arching high into the air. All of the young men and women are at once amongst the tangle of vibrant green trees. They move independently, but in concert with one another, swaying like the leaves themselves. Cut to black. Words appear. Rhizophora was the plant most affected by Agent Orange. Agent Orange is a chemical herbicide used by the U.S. military during the Vietnam War to kill foliage and make human targets visible. Between 1962 and 1971, 20 million gallons were sprayed over 4.5 million acres. Today, the soil and water have toxicity levels 1,000 times too high for humans or plants. Between 3 to 4 million Vietnamese have suffered health effects. The mutated DNA is passed down from generation to generation. The war ended 40 years ago, but Agent Orange still lives on in the people and in the earth. Blurry footage of people walk toward us. Words appear. In the Friendship Village in Hanoi, Vietnam, live 100 young people. They are the children and grandchildren of veterans who were exposed to Agent Orange during the war. They get support for their disabilities, health issues, and learning. In April 2014, 11 of the residents created this video with Davide and Julia. It was inspired by their daily lives and dreams. A boy pushes another in a wheelchair. Children and young men and women of different shapes and sizes walk in small groups, in pairs and alone, talking and laughing, streaming out of various buildings, heading somewhere beyond the camera. Some walk with crutches, others struggle to walk. Co-created and performed by Hong, Mai, Long, Do, Tuan, Hun, Tron, Lei, Hua, and Dong. Directed by Julia Metzger-Traber and Davide DeLee. Edited and co-created by Caitlin Stiles. Music by Barnaby Tree. More children, adolescent boys and girls, stream past us. Cinematography by Hon Do, Julia Metzger-Traber, and Davide DeLee. Costumes by Mai. Adults hold the hands of children as they amble across the square. A short girl propels herself using 2 crutches.
Somewhere in the downtown Yangon, which is the biggest city of Myanmar. The city is alive with people going to and from. 25-year-old woman is waiting to cross the road. The walk signal turns from red to green. She is now crossing the road. She is limping as she walks. Titling of the film, Traveler. The same woman is sitting at the window seat of a highway bus, gazing outside at the passing sceneries. The scenery suggests a hot and arid rural area. The woman steps out of the bus. Her family members, mother, grandmother, nieces, nephews can pick her up.
You look so beautiful. You look beautiful with the car.
Her father drives an outboard cart.
Where is the younger sister? Who wants to come with me on the cart?
She climbs on the cart with her nieces and nephews as the cart drives along the unpaved lane. They unload her step off the cart when they reach home. She unpacks her things and distributes gifts to her family members.
Mom, here are some dry fish. Daddy, 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 don't eat all the fried noodle.
She pays respect to the elders and the grandparents. The grandma gives her blessings.
For your good deed, may for your elders, may you be free of all the dangers, famines, misfortunes, and enemies for the course of your whole life.
This is the interview, and she is sitting on her wheelchair.
My grandparents said, never mind the cost. We will cure it for you, ask around. Of course, my leg is not fixable or curable, but I too did expect a day when it would be fixed.
The morning sunlight filters through the leaves and branches. The woman is walking in the village.
I didn't dare to go to places that others went. And I didn't feel like I wanted to go to anywhere either. I just prefer to stay by myself. But during that time, I didn't feel helpless because I always get top grade in exams. I suppose that was a kind of motivation for me, and I didn't know much about being disabled. I wanted to be among the few in the village who finished high school. Back then, only a handful of people from the village finished high school. After finishing my high school, everyone supports me to join the university. Being a disabled person, some people would look down at me. Since I became older, I began to notice these things more and more.
The woman is walking in the crowded downtown area. Some people check her out as she limps past by them.
When I went out, people would stare at me as if I was a strange thing. I didn't want to deal with them so much, so I didn't go out much either. I just mostly went between the dorm and classes. Sometimes I didn't even want to continue school. Although I wanted to quit, I needed strength to make myself want to carry on. Sometimes I had to talk to myself for moral support.
The woman is now recalling her college years' experience in front of the university that she attended.
When I graduated, I didn't want to go to the graduation ceremony because I was sick of getting stared at. Now, I look back and hear my friends saying, "Here are my graduation ceremony pictures taken with who and who." And I see their pictures in pretty graduate gowns, marking an important milestone for their lives. And I think, how good it would have been only if I were in the mood to go to the ceremony with my family. And regret my decision not to take part in the ceremony. Go slowly.
The woman and some of her family members to go their farm near their village.
Tell Mrs. Amian that I won't come to her anymore. I didn't bring any food for her. She will yell at me because she gave me so much food last time. How much for a bunch of mint?
100 just for 3 bunches.
Oh, really?
They start weeding and clearing the field together.
After graduation, I went back to my village and I thought, that's it. A person from the country is basically finished once done with school. There is no opportunity for them. I help out with my parents. They are ranchers, harvesting the beans and vegetables, going around in that cycle. Then people started saying, what's the point of getting a degree only to see the money wasted on school? There were some parents who thought like that and didn't send their kids to school. They didn't want to encourage education. I had to hear their views, but I wasn't able to do anything myself yet at that time, so I didn't get to prove them wrong yet.
The villagers are bathing in the river at the back of the village. She is also in the river and she is swimming desperately. The sand is setting by the time she comes out of water.
A person from the country is basically finished once done with school. There is no opportunity for them. I have to look for the job opportunities from the newspapers and journals. Back then, there was no internet in the countryside. Even in town, you had to go to internet cafes. In the towns nearby, nobody even knew what internet was.
The woman is brushing her teeth and washing her face by the water storage tank in front of the house in the early morning. She is now feeding their family-owned cows. She is preparing school uniforms for her nephew.
Turn this way.
Together with her nieces and nephews, she goes to their school along the third path.
I also went to this school when I was a kid. The same one you are going to.
Does everyone have to go to school?
Yes, everyone has to.
Do you know Zayatong?
Of course. Only then she will become an educated person. Zayatong, you know? You know Zayatong? Only then she will become an educated person.
Children are studying in the village primary school.
1 hour, 60 minutes, 60 minutes, 1 hour.
One round of the minute indicator is
1 hour.
how many minutes in an hour?
60 minutes. 12 o'clock.
You are not going back yet, right? I'll be going. I'll just back this evening. I will stay for 1 or 2 more days. I have to prepare for a course. I have to go to Bangkok for 6 days. You get dinner too. It's so hard to take a bus. I've not been feeling too well because of the weather.
Now, she is sitting on a bench under the tree's shade in front of the school.
I felt worse about not getting to be a teacher, especially when I came back to my village. There, I would send my cousins to school. My friends who applied for the teacher post now became teachers, and I was not able to be one.
She starts crying as she recalls the past incidents.
We all had the same dreams and hope, but mine was denied. Whenever I thought of that, I would feel the sadness. So I don't go to school that much. But when I miss my teacher friend and want to see her being happy with her students, I would come here.
She talks about how she got rejected when she applied for teaching credential qualifying courses.
Although I knew that I didn't have much chance, I applied for a teacher position anyways, because I wanted to try something that I felt like doing. I had to go to the city for evaluation. The interview went very well. They really liked all my answers. Then they asked me to walk, to check for a physical health inspection. They didn't remark anything for walking. Then they told me to run, but I couldn't. They said I would be required to do physical exercises and water the plants. So I couldn't attend teaching credential course that my friends applied as well. They had a chance to wait for their interview result, but I couldn't even get a chance for that.
She is sitting on the outskirts with luggage on board. The outskirt is going out of the village now. It's going beside of the ancient giant lion statues. Now she is standing near the highway road and waiting the highway express. She climbs on a highway bus. As she gazes outside, she thinks about her experiences when she was fresh out of the bus in the city for the first time.
So I give up on the teacher dream and wonder what should I do next. I came to the capital with a belief that I will get an opportunity one day, which I believe I deserve.
She is walking in the downtown area.
I try to attend a free computer training course while struggling alone in the city. Later, I started working with Myanmar Independent Living Initiative, the group trying to claim equal rights for disabled people.
She sits in front of her computer at her office.
I was then selected for a leadership training program for disabled people in Japan.
She is having fun with her friend when she was studying on scholarship in Japan.
Let's be merry and celebrate today.
Looks beautiful.
The dress suits you very well. You look like Aung San Suu Kyi. Her activity taking part in disability campaigns.
We want a discrimination-free environment. Starting now, let's create an environment that does not discriminate against the disabled people. Let's make sure there are no more discriminators. Let's create a society in which everyone can live together in harmony.
Her family greets her at the airport when she came back from Japan. The city is alive with people going to and from. She is now making a speech, seated on a wheelchair for a barrier-free campaign for the person with disability.
This is my first time riding on a bus with a wheelchair. There are a lot of difficulties. They said they don't stop at our bus stops. They said where we want to go is too far, etc.
She is sitting in front of a mirror and applying traditional makeup on her face.
Back then, I didn't think so much about romance. I was thinking I would end up living alone. My parents said it's better for me to be alone. They always said that married couple is having this and that problem. So you are better off alone. As for me, I used to see my disability as a weakness. There were things that I wanted to do, but I couldn't. I used to set up an emotional barrier due to this disability. Then I thought, a person cannot be completed without love.
The city is busy with the hustle and bustle with people going about. Now, she is holding her boyfriend's hand as they cross the street. Her boyfriend is lean and tall, has brown complexion and a perspective gentleman. The two are walking as the sun is nearly setting at a jetty.
When did you come there?
Since a while ago.
The jetty is busy with small boats as well as freight ships moving about. Do you have that kind of sunset in your village?
Yes, there are also mountains as well.
So, do you miss home when you see the sunset?
Yes, of course. I'm going to sing because I miss home.
Okay, I'll have for Fleming.
I don't know the lyrics. You are going to drop the iPad. I'm all dressed up for singing. Born of different fate and karma. Make sure you get it. I have to sing it at work. Born of different fate and karma as God wishes. The heart accepts my fate adoringly, playing a tune that makes 100 flowers bloom. Shoot straight. You can tilt the frame. A true human will have an imperfection for sure, oh mother. I will keep going without surrender. Mother smiles in tears amidst the applauses. That I believe and journey on my own musical path. Oh dear moon, by the river in Irrawaddy, I bid you farewell and must go afar, for I have no choice, forgive me, mother. I'm struggling in the currents and oceans of life. I sent a message with the hovering bats under the moon. I give up, I will sing again. I'm struggling in the currents and oceans of life. A smile from my lover cheers me on. Stay behind in the countryside for now, my love. That's enough. I'm really missing my village now. How did you shoot?
This way, this way. Do you see the sunset in the frame? They check out the video footage that the boyfriend shot.
You only filmed this one? So useless. See, you tilt the frame.
I tilt the frame deliberately. They tease each other. Point out how the framing is tilted in the shots. Look at it in that way.
Yes, it's a little tilt.
I tilt the frame deliberately.
Just admit that you are useless. The background is so noisy.
They leave the jetty, singing out the song she is rehearsing, and they are walking happily.
I will only come back after being a success, mother. I will only come back after being a success, mother.
Let's sing together.
I will only come back after being a success, mother.
End credit of the film. A film by ပြေဇော်ဖြိုး မိုင်းအောင်လင်းထွန်း လွေးစာကြီးစိုး Starring စိုးမိုးဦး အေးမင်းနိုင် Camera မိုင်းအောင်လင်းထွန်း ပြေဇော်ဖြိုး လွေးစာကြီးစိုး Edited by ပြေဇော်ဖြိုး Music တန်စင်အလှပန်းမျိုးတရားမင်းကျွန်းစိုး Hebe Opening Music Diary Volume 1 Hebe Prayer Music Diary Volume 1 Hebe Writhing Flower Music Diary Volume 1 www.freeplaymusic.com Cycling in Dublin. Special thanks to Somo U and Emina. Somo U's family. BEPS 66 Sikobin Village. BHS Mijaoye. Office of the Education Officer McQuay, Mealy Office, Post Supervisor Peter Lom, Corinne Van Egress. Translated by M. No. Special thanks to Wana Jo, Moses Mug, M. No, Ta U Mong, Pei Mong Saint, Joseph Nai, Mintan U, Cholia Jo, Saint Lin, Buddha Tong, Aomimia Chu, Gong Sin, J. Lin Sit, Lin San Nui, Kin Suji, Jasmine Sudri McDowell. Supported by the United States Agency for International Development's Office of Transition Initiative, USAID OTI. Produced by the Human Rights Human Dignity Flint Institute. Copyright by HDFI 2014.
Well, that is our program. This is Emily again. We are going to start our panel now. So if our panelists can all make their screens viewable. I see everybody but Claire. I believe Claire is joining us soon. Ah, there you are. Wonderful. And so I just going to briefly tell everybody who you all are, but we can actually start by having you just say a few reactions and just what brings you to the panel today. We'll go in this order. First, we have filmmaker, Superfest juror, and UC Berkeley professor, Karen Nakamura, and she'll be moderating the panel today. Then we have Tiffany Yu, who is currently Miss Amazing, amongst many other roles. She's also the founder of Diversability and serves on the San Francisco Mayor's Council on Disability. And we have science fiction writer and activist Claire Light. And then we have actor and filmmaker James Quedado. If you can start us off, Karen.
Great. So I'm really thankful to both the Asian Art Museum as well as to the Longmore Institute for hosting this. My name is Karen Nakamura. I'm an Asian American woman. I am middle-aged, although I have the inscrutable Asian unknowing ageness thing, except for the fact that my hair is graying. My face is round and I'm wearing a Hawaiian shirt. And my day job is I'm the UC Berkeley House Chair in Disability Studies and Professor of Anthropology. And I'm very honored to host this. So I thought I'd let the panelists also give themselves a visual description. So maybe Tiffany, can you start us off with a description of yourself?
Sure. Hi, everyone. This is Tiffany. I am Taiwanese American, and I have thick black hair that is a little below shoulder length. I'm wearing a blue top, and I am sitting in a bedroom that has these off-white colored walls.
Claire?
Hi, I'm Claire Light. I am 50 years old and mixed race, Chinese and white. I have bobbed brown hair, and I have a virtual background, which when I move out of the way, you can see is a female monkey king flying through the air. She's my default because I have a book coming out next year featuring a female monkey king.
That is awesome. James?
Hey there, this is James Quedado. I'm an actor, local actor, filmmaker here in the Bay Area. I am so grateful for the Longmore Institute and for the Asian Art Museum for featuring me. I am I'm 43 and I'm wearing a yellow hat and a black sweater featuring James Baldwin. It's by a local artist. I'm gonna drop their name on the chat so you can look them up on Instagram. And I'm leaning against a red chair and against a white wall that's with paint slightly peeling on the back.
That's so awesome. This is Karen again. And so just a reminder, because I will forget, when you respond, if I don't introduce you, can you say your name? This is for participants or audience members who are just listening in. So I wanted to start, maybe just go through some of the films. The first film was really remarkable, The Nature of Pleasure, because I think it asks really difficult questions about sexuality and representation, but I like how it does it through the computerized voice and the sort of stylized images. I was wondering if any of you had responses to that format, especially given how I think for both the Asian and Asian American community, sexuality is difficult to talk about, and for the disability community, sexuality is difficult to talk about. So anyone want to start us off?
This is Tiffany. I can start. I did notice, kind of like dating and relationships flowing through a few of the films. And one of the things that I have been spending a lot of time thinking about is kind of like the desexualization and the dehumanization of the disability experience. And then when you layer on, whatever Asian cultural values we're bringing into that, not wanting to acknowledge kind of sexuality or intimacy in that regard. I think one of the things I did find interesting about that film was that it took this, I forget how did you describe it, Karen?
Mm-hmm.
It was like, I think there was a part of me that wanted to actually see the humans and see
the stylized images.
Yeah.
Yeah, we never actually see her, but that is such a, it's interesting because I wonder if she's playing with that, right? James,
hi, this is James. Yeah, I do want to jump in. Thank you so much. I thought there was a photo of her towards the end. Was that her? There was a black and white photo of an Asian woman, right? And I was wondering whether that was her picture, that was her moment of like revealing who she was. And but yeah, on the question of sex, disability, and Asian Americanness or Asianness. I never had that sex conversation with my parents either. And it's really difficult to have that sex conversation, being disabled as well, especially, with cerebral palsy. Part of my previous work is working with adults with intellectual disabilities and providing direct care with them. And many of them have sex desires. And, and how, as an advocate for these clients, we encourage those moments, but, it's within the framework of like how the family interacts with that as well, whether they want those clients to sexually, to express their sexual desire. So it's definitely a huge challenge. And I also want to put it in the matrix of like, sex in general within the Asian American community or the Asian community is, it's definitely a hard conversation or a hard, it's rarely seen. It's rarely seen in films, right? It's rarely seen in the media unless it's really graphic. But I love this film. I love the idea of like just seeking tenderness. Seeking tenderness is all that, the touch, the human touch, right? And, of course, we contextualize this at this moment, and it's COVID-19 where no one's allowed to touch, and how that's even more impacting the disability community, this lack of touch, right? This lack of like, some people in the disabled community, all they have is touch, and that's, that's really, it's both heartbreaking and really, just really tender film for me.
Yeah. Claire, did you want to say anything?
Sorry, we've wandered away from the original question. Can you remind me what it was?
The original question, this is Karen again, was that in that first film that we watched, The Nature of Pleasure, the creator and artist, Tan Mi Diep, talks through a computerized voice and a digitized sort of stylized image. So you never quite see her as she talks about sexuality. And it's really interesting because it's such a hard topic, I think, for Asian Americans, for people with disabilities, and especially Asian American women. And then James brought up the great point about families.
Mm.
So I was wondering, did you have a response to that?
Yeah, I thought this was a thread that ran through all of the films. Actually, there was definitely particularly in the last one when the Burmese woman was talking about her family's concern that she would, the way it was reflected was that her family simply said that she would be better off without a partner. And that was clearly the way that they reflected her concern that she would not be able to find a partner. And all of this and what you all were talking about, I'm sorry, this is Claire. I'm going to forget to do that. What all of you were talking about reminded me of this film, which is on Netflix right now, called Crip Camp, which is about the origins of disability organizing and activism in the United States. And one of the interviewees in that show, who was not Asian American, by the way, said that his parents, when he became very involved with other disabled people in activism and started dating other disabled people, his parents were there's a sort of hierarchy even among disability, where people with mobility issues are ranked higher than people with cerebral palsy, for example. And so his parents were like, well, it's fine that you're dating a disabled person, but can you date a mobility rather than a CP? And so I was thinking about that when we were watching the first film, where the narrator has CP. And this is there's so many layers of concern there. One being, if she could get into a relationship, her partner would then become her primary caregiver, because she lives in a society, and here also she would live in a society where there's no societal support for the disabled. So your intimate partner, your sexual partner, will then have to take on the burden of becoming a primary caretaker.
Yeah.
On top of that, what are the chances of getting into a relationship when sexuality in all of our societies is so based upon appearance? And if you don't look right, if you don't express the kind of beauty that's standard, and so much of our beauty standards is based upon health. If you don't express the kind of health that's expected, then how can you be considered beautiful? And if you're not beautiful, how can you be considered lovable? And this is a very big issue in disability justice, where where can we walk away from beauty, not just the beauty standard or altering the beauty standard, but any beauty standard at all? Can we embrace ugliness? Can we embrace unlovability, so that we accept the right that every person has to be loved and to be cared for, regardless of their level of beauty, their level of health, their level of ability?
Thank you, Claire. This is Karen. That and James's comment, it really raised for me like my mixed feelings in the last film, Traveler, about Myanmar, when at the end she starts dating an apparently able-bodied man. And I had such mixed feelings, because I felt like, well, was this, as a disabled person myself, was she dating him in order to prove that, yes, I can date an able-bodied person? And then I realized my own sort of inherent maybe ableism or disableism or something similar there. And I realized my mixed feelings are, I think, a representation of that double bind some of us really find, whether it's dating across disability and ability, or dating across race, that either way we go, we are criticized. I'm not sure if that was a comment, if anyone wanted, or a question, if anyone wanted to respond to that.
Well, it just, this is Claire.
Go ahead, Claire.
Not a direct response, but it just also made me think about something that everyone can relate to right now. How can you date if you can't leave the house? Yeah. For so many disabled people, we're homebound, bound by disability bound by you know, not being able to leave the house, not being able to leave the house by ourselves. How can you be sexual if you can't literally physically reach other people? And of course, you know, in a few months, maybe even another year, year and a half, most of the world will be released from this quarantine, but disabled people will still be stuck in this position.
Yes, I was reading, I wish I could remember the name of the person. This is Karen. An article earlier this morning of a woman who said that for her, her house is her freedom. And so all of these people describing themselves, you know, freedom from the institutionalized life that she otherwise had. And so everyone describing themselves as being on lockdown and so forth seemed so unfair to her.
This is James.
Yeah, go ahead.
So that's a really great point, Karen, about the double bind and about the self-critiqueness that I get to do also as a disabled person, as a queer person of color when it comes to dating, right? That's a really great question. Did she choose that partner because of her own internalized ableism? Did she, you know, was there a deliberate intention for her? Because at one point in my dating life, right, I was dating exclusively white men because of the proximity to whiteness, right, to what I thought was going to give me a lot more whatever. And but it was only after a thorough examination of that internalized racism that I find that I am eliminating partners who look like me because of the conditioning that I got of what, you know, the standard of beauty is, which is whiteness, right? Which is able-bodiedness. And so there's that concept of like, am I really making a subconscious choice or a deliberate choice in mate selection as well? So that's a really great point, Karen.
This is Tiffany. I just want to step in and kind of address a couple of things. The first is, you know, I guess my hope is that we can move away from associating disability with ugly, because I really believe that everyone has preferences. And so to the extent that we can, and you know, a lot of disabled people will do certain things differently and will look very different when we do them. So like, for those of you who are unaware, my right arm is paralyzed, so I will do things a little bit differently. And it took me a long time to stop associating myself with ugly, because I had just grown up thinking that because my body didn't look like everyone else's, that put me into, you know, having this mindset that I was ugly. And then the second thing I wanted to say was that I actually didn't really, you know, a lot of the character in Traveler, like a lot of her story actually resonated with how I felt like I grew up. But I didn't really think anything of the fact that she was dating a non-disabled person because, again, I guess people have preferences and maybe there are some subconscious things that are happening there. But I also acknowledge that the majority of people, even though, you know, our community is 1.3 billion and growing, is that the majority of the world still is non-disabled. So if you are specifically saying, oh, I only want to date disabled people, that's potentially, you know, if you're here in the US, narrowing your pool to what is it, 1 in 5, and then, you know, depending on what your what your sexual orientation is, that may narrow those numbers as well. And then the last thing I wanted to say is really about interdependence. And this is something that I'm learning myself. And I've been seeing a couple of chats come in around this idea of like caregiver and partner rolled into like one identity. And my hope is, Claire, I think to your point around like, what does dating look like right now, is one of the things that I think is just incredible about the disability community is that we just life hack our way and adapt and figure out how to do things. And so to the extent, you know, I think now the situation is very hard for anyone to date, but I think that when/if we move out of whatever the sheltering situation is, we'll figure out and we'll adapt and find new ways to date. Because even now we're finding new ways to date through video, you know, doing more phone calls, taking virtual tours through museums if those are being offered.
Thank you. I was wondering if we could change our gaze, so to speak, this is Karen, sorry, to the film Rhizophora, which was set in Vietnam and features 11 actors from the Friendship Village who are making poetry and film and art together on the screen. For me, it's very interesting to watch it in this setting on Zoom, because the last time I saw it, I was in a big auditorium at Superfest, and I knew everyone in the room was part of the disability community, and I knew the gaze, you know, the way we look at the film would be through those lenses. And so it's so interesting for me, I cannot see the participants here, and so I wonder how that looks different from an Asian American perspective or a disability perspective, and what it means. When are we watching ourselves, and when are we watching the other, and how do we best get a good sense of presentation and representation? I thought maybe Claire, because of your work in film, or James, you could talk to that about this question of the gaze, G-A-Z-E, not the other gaze. We can talk about the other gaze as well.
Oh, well, James, you're muted. So this is Claire. Yeah, I thought that was very interesting in both Rhizophora and also in the film about the Australian who goes to visit the Japanese friend, and how it was so hard for me during the what was that film, the second one,
When Brendan Met Hiroe.
When Brendan Met Hiroe, it was so hard for me to pull myself out of the optics of this white man traveling to Japan to sort of court the friendship of this Japanese woman and what that ordinarily means, but then to sort of pull myself out of that and think, oh, but he can't see her and she can't see him in the same way that we are seeing them as we're watching them on the screen. And there was something incredibly beautiful about trying to, you know, the film itself gives you a lot of visual poetry that the filmmakers themselves can't experience in the same way that we can. And so it was, and I felt that almost as a distraction from the way that the filmmaker and the two main characters must have experienced themselves, their story, and each other. And so I thought that was wonderful. And then back to Rhizophora, I loved that these characters, these figures in the story were, you know, communing with and imitating foliage and trees, because you know, it's a very many-layered kind of way of looking at their situation and talking about how their lives came about because of Agent Orange. Their lives as they are came about because of Agent Orange, and without judgment about whether or not that's a bad or good thing. And that their situation is similar to the situation of the trees in their country. I thought it was just a beautiful way of looking at the way that their lives are shaped, the way that their bodies are shaped, the way that they move through life without judgment. And that's something that you just don't see very often. Generally, when you see, you know, documentaries from the point of view of the outside gaze, it's pitying and serious, and oh, look at these poor people who suffer so much from disability because of Agent Orange. And there's none of that judgment there. There's none of that value placed upon their lives or their situation that says, oh, they are less than, or oh, we have to do something about this. They're set aside clearly in a separate community. And there's no judgment about that either, whether or not they actually want to have more flow with the mainstream. I was really, really struck by that.
This is James. That's a great point, Claire. That whole no judgment. This is the power of what happens when we make our own film to tell our own stories, that this is exactly who we are and what we are, the good, the bad, and all the ugliness too as well. And all of us, this question about representation, presentation, right? And I love this question, Karen. For me, it was super clear who the film is geared towards to with Rhizophora. And I know it's for the disabled community, to the disabled community, versus when Brandon meets Hiroe, it was unclear to me who the audience is for. And clearly, the same feeling for me with the whole a Westerner coming into Japan came up for me. And again, that's like my own shit, so to speak, right? That's like judging it. That's it's like, oh, this white man rescuing an Asian woman again, blah blah blah, and like that whole thing came up for me, and I got to step back and like, this is his story. Can I just look at it and appreciate it, that this is this person's story, rather than creating this like multi-layered judgment, already critiquing it from like, Asian American studies critique point of view. And but I have a special love for Rhizophora. I'm a dancer as well, and I love the fact that they use movement to tell their stories, and how, especially the mattress or the bed dance, and that was just like amazing to me, how bodies were just like touching and going over each other and layering each other. I thought the use of dance in this film was so compelling. It definitely, and the whole reenactment of like the tea party from Alice in Wonderland, right? Let's talk about that, and like taking that Western story and centering Vietnamese actors and Vietnamese disabled actors and into it, and creating this, this fantasy moment, and just like, what is it like live in this amazing world where the story of the disabled community is centered and told and written by us. So that was really cool.
Yeah. Tiffany, did you want to jump?
Sure, this is Tiffany. I think to Claire's point, and echoing what James said as well, I just loved the fact that, again, it's like the no judgment, but there was a playfulness about it as well, right? So it's like the disability narratives, they don't always need to be sad. They don't always need to be, things that need to be fixed. I don't know if it was mentioned on early in the film, if it was Agent Orange or if it was just the text at the end. But one of the things I remember when they were first showing the footage, it made me think a little bit about crib camp, and the fact that when I was growing up as a disabled kid, I didn't know any other disabled people. And so I didn't feel like I could root myself in community until I got to my 20s. And then I was able to craft and cultivate that community for myself. So I remember when the first initial scenes came with two girls playing with each other, and then everyone kind of in this little dance and this movement, I was like, oh, I want to be there too.
Yeah, there was such a sense of love and community in that film. It's interesting for me because Rhizophora is one of the few films where I actually resented the audio description. Usually I love the audio description. But one of the things that the audio description did was it actually pointed out that a woman had unusually large eyes, or that someone was walking with a limp. And so it pointed that those moments of difference out, whereas the film just shows it to us as if it's natural. And I wonder if there's some way to do audio description that sort of accepts and loves all of those without having to indicate them. I think it's still a challenge for the developing art of audio description. We have a comment from the audience, from Lydia Brown, who is echoing some of your comments on when Brendan met Hiroe. I want to read her comment, or their comment, sorry. I do want to say, though, that disability does not erase race, exclamation point. And while I found that story very touching, The fact that they are both disabled does not erase the entire history of white men's fetishization of East Asian women, and Japanese women in particular, period. There's an entire phenomena of white artistic men in particular being especially racist to Japanese and other East Asian women, artistic and holistic alike, end quote. And I think that many disabled women have felt that gaze of disabled Asian and Asian American women have felt that gaze of white men and even some white disabled men. I'm not sure if anyone had wanted to respond. Claire?
Just a quick note. This is Claire. Just a quick note. What does the word gaze mean when you're talking about blind people? And it's, and particularly when you're talking about deaf blind people, how exactly do two people who cannot see or hear each other perceive race? And that's a question that's not answered in the film. And I'm glad the commenter brought this up. But it's a question that's not answered in the film. It's a question that I can't answer. But I think it's really worth sitting and cogitating over, because how much of race is in how we perceive each other with the senses, and how much of it is cultural values, because it was clear in the film that there were certain cultural values that were being carried over. Brendan was definitely more touchy than Hiroi, and some of that might be personality. Clearly, a lot of it was cultural. So that's just a big question mark for me, but I definitely want to raise that question.
Other thoughts? One of the moments that I wanted to perhaps think more about, it came up in the in Traveler, was the role of the family in Asian and Asian American disability. I've been told by my family, and I think many Asian and Asian Americans have, that my body does not belong to me, it belongs to the family. And so what I do, my actions reflect my family, and I am not allowed to do things to my body that would bring shame onto the family. And I think we see snippets of this, and many of the films are pushing back. I think Rise of 4 is a reclamation of that in the Friendship Village, they are finding their bodies again. But I wondered if anyone wanted to talk about this, the topic of family, which James had brought up in some of his early responses. Maybe James, if I could put you on the spot.
Sure. This is James again. And, I just want to ground my response to the Myanmar film as well. At one point, when she was talking about her leg and about her family wanting to cure her leg or to fix her leg, and how she also believed that it can be fixed at one point, right? So it's just this conditioning that, the disabled population. I grew up in the Philippines, actually, and I am familiar with this dynamic, this discriminatory dynamic, and the way that disabled people are seen in Asian countries, where it's like they're abnormal, they should be hidden away, they should be sent away, this type of thing, because we don't want defects, right? They're considered defects, and so it's really interesting that this is brought up. I'm a person in recovery, and I know that the whole Asian community as well, and their relationship with alcoholism and drug addiction, right? And it's really talked about in films as well. And so this idea that the whole idea about alcoholism and addiction, like if you can just pull yourself up with your bootstrap, you have strong self-will, you can quit it, and all of these things. And that's not my experience. It's like I needed to have a multifaceted way to like treat my alcoholism, my addiction. But in Asian community, it's a source of shame. It's still a stigma being considered an alcoholic addict. And, and just to extend it a little bit more into mental health issues as well, which has a disabling effects to a lot of us, depression and anxiety and bipolar and manic depressive. So, I just want to really highlight this. I guess for me, it's really a meditation in how we as a community can start informing each other and each other's family and start, it's like, hey, nothing is wrong with me. This is not a stigma. This is actually a source of resiliency. Being disabled is a source of resiliency because from these, disabled diagnoses, right? People survive, people live, people thrive, people, can still find joys in their lives and go on and be strong advocates like all of us here.
I'll jump in here. This is Tiffany. So I acquired my disability when I was 9 in a car accident where my dad also passed away. And one of the things that I have been thinking about and that we talked a little bit about in our prep call was this whole idea of we are a representation of our family unit. And at all costs, you want to prevent shame to the family. Yeah. And so if I look at my situation as, there's death in the family, which in the way I grew up, we just never acknowledged death. So we still talked about my dad as though he was alive. Mm-hmm. There's also trauma in there because of what happened with the car accident. Again, I think to James' point, we just don't want to acknowledge mental health conditions and trauma or grief. And then there's disability and physical, and then I guess there's an invisible component to that as well. And so I've been thinking a lot about what it means to be sick versus permanently disabled, right? And so in the Myanmar story, her parents wanted to fix her. And I can't tell you, my entire adolescence after I became disabled was physical therapy, potential surgeries, acupuncture, this just desire for my mom to just want to fix me. And as a result, I actually think it took me. And what I appreciate about this story and why it resonated so much with me was the fact that because she got this scholarship or got into this program in Japan, I actually saw her grow into her disability identity as a strong vocal disability advocate. And yeah, I don't know, there were a lot of parallels in that to my own story. And one of the things I do think about is, it's funny because I feel very proud of my disability identity, but I know that my mom is still very hesitant and doesn't approve of the fact that I am as out, I guess I'll say, about so much of my own disability story.
Yeah, thanks. I mean, we're also seeing in some of the chat comments, people just remarking on the growth. And I think many of us have encountered that growth moment when we change from viewing it as, as what we have as an illness or impairment or just plain stigma or defect to just really embracing it as part of us, as who we are. Whether that acceptance is acceptance about our disability or about addiction, it's an important moment. So I think this is a good time to segue to maybe my last question. And the topic is, it's clear from the panelists, you guys, we in the community, and from the comments in chat and the questions, we in the community have such great stories about our experiences, about all the things that have changed us, about the communities we've encountered. How do we get more of those stories out there? These films were fantastic, but they were just a small bit of the festival. How do we explode this? Anyone want to start us off?
This is Claire. I have a one-word answer: funding. for those of you who don't know me, which is probably most of you, I've spent most of my career as a nonprofit arts organizer in the Asian American community. When I first started speaking out about disability, which is about 6 or 7 years ago now, I was asked what my experience of disability was in the Asian American community, having been very active in the Asian American community for about 20 years now. And I said I had no experience of disability in the Asian American community whatsoever. In all my years up to the point that I actually became disabled myself, I never encountered a discussion of disability in the Asian American community. And I had experienced artwork and cultural product from literally hundreds, almost thousands of Asian American artists at that point. So, the number one thing is putting your money where your mouth is. If you want to hear from someone, you put up money and say, I want to hear from you, here's some money. Yeah. So funding for the arts, funding for cultural product, funding for the humanities, and funding especially geared towards disabled people speaking their own truth and telling their own stories. You have to reach out, you have to ask for it.
This is James. Sorry. This is James. I want to echo Claire. Give me your money. I want all your money. You know, as a local filmmaker, you know, I have a short film that I self-funded with a couple producers, and you know, it was in a shoestring budget, but it was you know, I'm really grateful that it got made, that it's out in the festival circuits right now, that it's being recognized. But it's hard to like push the stories without funding. And you know, yes, we can collaborate, yes, we can partner, yes, we can do all these things. That's but if there's no engine, i.e. money, that will, you know, propel these projects forward, to have our stories like actually like have a meeting with a Netflix producer. I'm like, we need this story to be seen. You know, it's like, you know, Netflix is hungry for content, Apple TV is hungry for content, Disney is hungry for content. But to get to that point, there needs to be, you know, support from the local community to support local filmmakers and independent filmmakers as well.
Yeah, yeah. Thanks, Tiffany.
This is Tiffany. I just wanted to echo something that Claire said. So, or add on to it, I guess. I haven't really spent a lot of time in Asian-centered spaces. Mainly disability first, and then acknowledging that I am Asian second. And so I love the fact that this is co-hosted with the Asian Art Museum, and I would love to see more Asian and Asian American communities start to bring in more disability-centered perspectives, because I often find that when I show up to Asian-centered spaces, it's a different type of conversation. And I think, and I had mentioned this earlier, one of the things I'm realizing about my story is that so much of what influenced how I saw myself and presented myself to the world as a disabled woman was influenced by the fact that I'm the daughter of Asian immigrants and the cultural values that they brought with them. So yeah, the funding thing is great. I'd love to see more partnerships like this. I'd love to see more Asian-centered spaces want to take leadership on bringing in more disability perspectives as well.
Yeah, thank you. This is such a wonderful opportunity that we've had to share this. And I'm sorry, Tiffany?
I said, I think Claire wanted to say something.
Oh, I'm sorry, Claire. I couldn't see her on my screen. Claire, go ahead.
And there was another thing, and this is so obvious, I can't believe none of us said it. Funding is the first word, and the second word is access. When I was organizing Asian American arts and cultural events, we took almost no thought towards accessibility. And when I think back on how inaccessible our events were, I cringe. We have to get out there. We have to talk about access. We have to talk about accessibility, and we have to make sure that accessibility is a top value in our community.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you. I think it's the hard conversation for both communities. I think, this is Karen, that within the Asian and Asian American community, talking about disability is very difficult. And I think within the disability community, talking about race is very difficult. And both sides, we would prefer that the other didn't exist almost. And we who lie at the intersections, we both bear the brunt of all that, but we also have the really fantastic stories that we can kick up to that. Tiffany, did you want to jump in?
Yeah, I think I would be remiss if I didn't talk about kind of what's happening right now in this COVID environment, being both Asian and part of the disability community. And so on the one hand, you have the threat of the increase in hate crimes and racism and xenophobia that is impacting the Asian people who look Asian. And then I'm also seeing how the disability community is so disproportionately impacted by what's happening now, whether it's potential discriminatory triage. And so my brain, like this to me is really like intersectionality at play. It's like these different facets of my identity are being impacted and targeted in different ways. And that's what I'm bringing into spaces every single time I enter them.
Yeah, I strongly believe that our presence makes the world a better place, whether it's Asian Americans or disabled people. When we are there, things change. So I wanted to finally thank the Asian Art Museum and the Longmore Institute, the Superfest. You know, these film festivals, whether it's CAM or Superfest, show distributors and whatnot that there are stories that are worth telling and people who want to watch those stories. And they become a vital place for us to tell them. I think I want to now turn it over. I know there are such great comments in the chat that were going on and so forth. Really a lot of fun conversations. Maybe you can take it to Twitter, but I think I'm going to pass it back to Emily, who is our kind host, and see if she wants to do any wrap up before we say goodnight to everyone.
No, just thank you all for all the help in the chat as we figured out various new tweaks to the Zoom platform for us that hadn't happened on our last two. We are learning and we learn with your help. So thank you so much. Thank you to our panelists and good night, everyone.
Yeah, and thank you to our interpreters and captioners. I forgot to say that. You guys are always fantastic. Okay, good night, everyone. Bye.